Hi guys, Vince here once again, and today we're going to be discussing Zoolander 2, and obviously going over some of my notes and giving a brief, as I've put into my title, gut feeling review as to what I thought of it, what to expect, and how it compares to some other movies that I've seen, and obviously giving an overall summary. So just before I start, as I speak, it's currently the 26th of December, Boxing Day as we call it here in the UK, and I've obviously just come back off the back of Christmas, so I hope you guys all had a great Christmas and are enjoying yourselves. Those of you who are immediately wondering why I'm wearing 3 or 4 layers is because it's currently very cold in the UK, and our flat unfortunately does not insulate very well. Of course, as far as the film's concerned, one of the things I should get off my chest straight away is that I have seen the first Zoolander film, and I was a big fan of it. In fact, I'm generally speaking quite a big fan of most of Ben Stiller's work, particularly his earlier work, as far as comedy is concerned. So I was cautiously quite hopeful for this film, and I was really hoping it could kind of hit the same notes as Zoolander 1 and deliver the same feeling. And I'm happy to say, in many respects, that is correct, and it does do that. As you can see from my notes here, the majority of them are positive. I'll obviously summarise this towards the end, but one of the things I would really say is that if you've seen the first film, you can very much expect some, if not most, of the same. Once again, here with the second, they haven't really tried to be really creative and go crazy or out of the box and do really strange things. It's definitely a very similar approach. As you can see here, so a lot of the old characters that showed up in the initial film, I can't talk about too many of them because it would spoil the film, and I'm not going to provide any spoilers here, but a number of those old faces that we've had will be showing up once again. Even some of the more niche characters that you probably wouldn't quite remember, and I remember mentioning one of them to my girlfriend, and she was quite shocked that I remembered them, that they're really, you wouldn't necessarily expect. And one thing I can say actually about these characters is that they're all generally quite true to the original character, and they do feel authentic to that, and they're well performed. Now, obviously, this isn't a drama, so we weren't necessarily expecting Oscar level performances here, but that's always it's always good to see. Another thing I wanted to touch on, which my girlfriend also mentioned to me, and I did think was quite strange, was that there was a lot of product cameos here. You know, some more subtle than others. Some the kind of James Bond style, opening up the phone, or just having the item in front of you, and some of them not so subtle. Some of them kind of referring to things in conversation. On some level, I wasn't really sure if this was some kind of satirical comment, or they were just trying to be funny and maybe twist what we see as a common everyday product. But it did feel a little bit over the top, and particularly towards the beginning of the film, I noticed quite a lot of that, and it felt a little bit cheap. And I'm not sure if there's for commercial reasons that they did that just to justify the costs, or otherwise, but it did feel a little bit cheap to me. One of the things that I did really like, and it's not really too much of a surprise that they've done this, is that with Zoolander 2 they brought through a lot of, they've effectively done Zoolander 1 but in the current modern day. I don't have the details in front of me, but Zoolander 1 is quite old now, and it was seen as something of a cult hit. It kind of surprised people that it became as popular as it did, and it came with a lot of ridiculous phrases like you googly and blue steel and all these other things that we like. And so what they've really done is they've brought this through to the modern day, and they've looked at some of the current trends and some of the current cultures that we have, such as hipsters, if you believe my notes, and they've really made fun of those and done a twist on those. And I think some of it works really well, and as soon as they did it, was kind of, it brought a smile to my face and others, as to their take on it. And I thought that worked really well, particularly as the whole focus around Zoolander is really in some ways just looking at culture and looking at how ridiculous it is, if you, I suppose, give it that much credit. Having said that, one of the other points I would immediately bring up is that this does have, like the first film, a very, very straightforward plot. Don't expect war and peace here, or Wuthering Heights. This is really straightforward. almost completely common denominator stuff a lot of the time. If you're watching this film, you're effectively looking for a bit of a joyride, something that you can relax and watch, and not really have to think too much. Now, originally I did kind of figure this as a negative. It certainly sounds like one, but you know, as far as comedy films are generally concerned, they generally struggle a lot with reviews with critics, and that's because critics presumably put them on the same level as some of the films I've just mentioned, and the Titanics and the really big, high-level production films of this world that focus on big heavyweight topics. Having said that, I personally feel that there's just as much room in the world for stupid films and comedy and things of that nature, if it's done well and if it makes you laugh and if it serves its purpose. You know, one of my favourite films of all time to this day is Superbad, which is a totally ridiculous film and doesn't make any sense in some parts and is absolutely hilarious. But it's a comedy film. It's designed to make you laugh. So if you're looking for a few cheap laughs and a bit of fun, this film could certainly serve that purpose for you. But don't expect too much plot. So another point which I was really surprised about, I had heard about it in passing from other people when the film came out earlier this year. Weirdly, to me, it feels like it was quite a while ago, but it was early 2016. Is that there are a lot of celebrity cameos, and I mean a lot. I counted over 19. There could well be more than that. One of the things that's actually quite surprising as well is that they're not C-list guys who you may or may not have heard of and you might miss. Some of them have, well, in fact the vast majority are very high profile, high level guys, and you get the feeling that a lot of them came along for the ride because they probably felt like it'd be a lot of fun and they wanted to chip in and maybe they wanted a bit of good PR. But I have to say a lot of them feel like they're really enjoying it and they're having fun with the film. They're not taking themselves too seriously, and in fact it reminds me of Anchorman 2. This film and that film in a number of ways, which I'll come on to shortly. But I remember Anchorman 2, I was quite surprised as to how many celebrities there were in that. And sometimes it does feel a little bit overdone or unnecessary. You know, maybe they called up a few too many guys and then thought, how are we going to fit them in? But a number of them are actually quite good, and it is quite funny the way they just sort of pull them in from left field out of nowhere. I can remember a couple in particular that were quite kind of left field, and you just thought, oh, okay, but it's funny and it works. And I mean, I'm not going to mention too many to the risk of ruining things, but a couple I can remember. Katy Perry's one, Mila Jovovich. Lewis Hamilton is in one part really briefly, and there's a whole ton of other guys, some of whom you would expect. Naomi Campbell is probably a name you wouldn't be too surprised to see, given this is technically a fashion film, but then some other really weird names that you probably would be more surprised to see. Another point is that it does play off a number of jokes from the first film, almost too much in my opinion, particularly towards the later stages of the film, and that is funny for me, particularly because I have a lot of positivity towards the first film, but it did feel almost like they lent on that a bit too much, and that was at the expense of maybe bringing in new jokes, which I'm sure they could have made because they have a lot of subject matter to be playing around with us being you know, quite some time on from the first film. Again, to kind of touch on the point about plot and the style of comedy as a genre, and certainly these types of films, there's a lot of deliberately bad jokes. And when I say deliberately bad, I don't mean absolutely terrible, not funny. I mean very common denominator, not intelligent, and that's something that plays off of the characters if you know them, and they can be quite good in some cases, but in some cases they do feel so bad they're bad, as opposed to unfortunately so good they're bad. Generally speaking, I do like these in certain amounts because they can be funny, but if you have too many, they just it does drag on a little bit. The overall theme of the films, for those that haven't seen them, is that Derek Zoolander was originally the world's greatest model. Without going into too much detail, the second film focuses around him and Hansel for bringing back their fame and reaching the top again for the various motives that they have. And again, they played with the subject matter of them being fashion models in the fashion world and how ridiculous it is, and some of the subcultures there quite well. And there was some good fun had there, and I think some of the best characters they brought through were played off of from that. There's a particular bit that focuses around some of the major current subcultures, which I'm going to avoid mentioning to give you guys the benefit of seeing it. But that was a lot of fun, and it's good to see how they played with that. Overall, the film is, I believe it's 100 minutes, if I remember correctly. I did just look it up on IMDb, and that does feel about the right length. They knew what they were going for with this film. Again, they're not going in here to be super intelligent and to try and blow your socks off. I feel that they knew what they were about, they knew what they were going for here, and that was the right length for the film as a whole. It gave you this joyride and a few good jokes and some nostalgia, but without going too far in and maybe spoiling that. Having said that, the end does drag on a little bit. There's a few jokes and bits that they play off of, which I thought didn't really quite hit the mark, and then the very end, it does, particularly because it's quite obvious that they're wrapping up the film. It did, for me, feel it did damage the pacing of the film, which is a shame, because it was a lot of fun in some respects, and definitely something overall which I'm quite happy to have watched. So to summarise, I do generally give my films a score out of 10, not necessarily 1, 2, or 3, but 1.1, 4.5, whatever, as to, of course, give them the merit. I really want to give this one a good mark, because I have a lot of positivity towards Zoolander and a lot of the films that are kind of similar to it. Anchorman was definitely one of my favourite films. It's probably the most quotable film of all time. But with Anchorman 2, I feel like they definitely struggled to repeat that and to as they say, put lightning in a bowl once again. So I think Zoolander 2 definitely struggles in the same ways that Anchorman 2 does, in that it tried too much to be like the first film, and then it feels like what's the phrase? Well, it's diminishing returns, effectively. So in short, I'm going to give this. I have gone back and forth with this in my mind a number of times, but I'm going to give it a 6.5. And the reason I'm going to give it a 6.5 is that it is above average. It is fun, and there's definitely fun to be had, even if you haven't seen the first film. If you have seen the first film, I would bump that slightly higher because of the nostalgia and some of the characters and what that brings, but not massively. I would give it a 6.8 if you have seen the first film, in my case. The reason being that the characters that come back are well performed, and they do add something, and there are a couple of extra jokes and references that are funnier and are better for the fact that you're aware of those points. To come back to what I was mentioning about the Anchorman and Anchorman 2 comparisons to this, I think I've covered most of them, but they definitely have a similar approach, in that they're so ridiculous it's funny, and they're so ridiculous it draws you in and pulls you into the overall film and the sense of immersion and caring about these characters. Derek and Hansel and these other guys definitely aren't the sharpest knives in the drawer, and there's a little bit of a feeling of Hot Shots or The Naked Gun, if you've seen those films, of slapstick and overdoing things and playing off of what they're doing. But unfortunately, they just couldn't quite capture that magic of the first film, and it is a shame, but it's notoriously difficult to do. One thing that I do feel people forget and don't recognise, particularly critics with comedy films, is that they're one of, if not the most difficult genres of films to do. That sentence didn't make a lot of sense, but I feel like you probably got the point. Comedy is very difficult to do because the timing and just the synchronizing with the general mindset of the audience is very difficult. Making something that's funny is not as simple as making something that's scary, and horror films are very notoriously difficult to do. So in that regard, I would like to give it a bit more in some ways, but I feel like 6.5 is a fair score. In short, I would say it's a fun joyride. If you just want to sit back and relax. It's a good kind of film that you'd want to watch on the plane, but not something I would keep in my DVD collection and come back to and really jump up and down about and recommend. Okay, so I hope that helps you guys. Definitely check this out if you're a fan of the original. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like content like this and you want to see some of my thoughts on other films. And I will be deliberately trying to do things which aren't quite fully mainstream or perhaps haven't had as much attention as they could do or haven't been covered yet, just to obviously provide more unique content. Do you agree with what I've said here? Do you think Zoolander 2 is a 6.5? Is that positive, harsh? What do you think, and what do you think of the comparisons to Anchorman? Would you agree with me, or do you think that's a bit off? Let me know what you think, and don't forget to join us next time. Cheers.